jokes all aside, what I'm trying to say is, if you're enjoying this content that I'm bringing to you, don't forget to tell your friends and family, tell them all. Hey man, there's this crazy guy on the internet. His name's Christian, buddy. He's got a podcast. Don't forget to subscribe as well. Interact with the video. Hey man, I'm answering questions. Put a comment. Roast me. I don't care. Put anything there. Sending you strength, sending you peace and love. And I hope that you enjoy this episode today. Let's go. Thanks, guys. Welcome to another episode of the Christian Buddy podcast. I am now with Clif. How you feeling today, Clif?
Feeling good, man. Glad to be here.
Awesome. And you've recently published a book. I'm actually very curious about finding out a bit more, and maybe the audience is a bit curious as well about your book. Do you mind expanding on that?
Yeah. So I recently just wrote a book called Martian, a non-science fiction guide for how to love, raise, and possibly be someone not quite human. And I'm a counselor in West Virginia in the United States. So I have taken all these different experiences with individuals from toddlers all the way to adults that show like these extraordinary skills and abilities, and their nature and nurture can't take credit for it. They just kind of naturally, they just have these inner drives, inner passions. And I've kind of compiled a list of patterns and similarities that I've seen throughout all these different individuals who I now identify as Martians. I call them Martians. So
okay, awesome. So another question off the back of that is, do you believe in aliens? I know it's a bit strange, but
yeah, no, it would be great. But who knows? Who knows?
Who knows?
Yeah, I always said what kind of led even to the title of the book. I said just the way I've always gone about life. I said at the end of my life, if they ever were to open me up, there would be like a little green dude, like a little alien inside controlling everything. And so that's kind of where the name Martian even came from.
Oh, that's awesome. And how long did it take you to write the book in its full? Yeah.
The concept came, there have been bits and pieces, different things that I've said throughout my life that kind of play into it, but really the concept was about 3 years ago. And I started actually writing it about 2 years ago. So overall about 3 years from actually like pen to notebook to actually typing it out and putting it together. Yeah.
No worries. Wow. And what advice can you just say, for example, someone's listening and they want to write their own book and publish it on Amazon. What advice would you give to that person?
To really, you got to just stay with it. I mean, that's the thing, because you want it to be perfect. And so it's almost discouraging, especially if you're a first time writer, you're publishing for the first time, it's super vulnerable because you're putting your thoughts out there, you're putting your work out there. And really the main thing is just to stick with it and see it through all the way to the end. That's the big thing. You're going to want to give up so many times along the way, but it's very worth it in the end ultimately, but you just got to stick with it.
Got to stick with it. Yeah. And having a look at your socials, it appears that is the theme of your life, sticking to it. I can see you seem like a very there's a competitive aspect to you. And yeah, I mean, I think in life, yeah, if the setting goals is fine, but I think, yeah, I appreciate the fact that we need to stay on it, and that's not an easy thing to do, in today's right. world. Yeah, it's not an easy thing.
Yeah, I'm constantly trying to look for anything new, especially physically, like any ideas that are crazy that I can push myself to try to do something that I've not done before, or something that again may make me want to quit. Like I don't feel like I physically am able to do that. And then once you get on the other side of that, the sense of accomplishment is amazing. And then really sets you up for everyday life. I mean, because when like little hiccups come, you're like, well, I've done that, so I'm sure I'll get through this. Like,
What's the craziest thing you've ever done, in your own opinion?
oh my gosh, the the, the craziest thing was, and I don't know how familiar you are with like the parks over here in the US, but like I did a 15-mile hike in Utah in Zion National Park, which is north of the Grand Canyon. And then I drove in the same day, drove around to just south of the Grand Canyon and hiked and slept about 2 hours and then hiked about 22 miles in that desert heat. So in the span of about 24 to 30 hours, I hiked about 35 miles, drove 4 or 5 hours. That was the craziest thing I've ever, like I look back, I have no idea how I survived. I barely made it out of that venture. That's the craziest
Oh.
thing.
How do you think you survived? Because what was driving you through these tough times? Because I'm always interested to hear about people's mindsets in these tough times. And do you mind expanding on that, on your
Well,
mindset?
I grew up, the area that I'm from is very, it's really like a coal camp, like it's a coal mining town. When you graduate, a lot of my buddies, like a lot of the guys will go into the coal mines. And then there's few of us that will actually leave, but a lot of people will stay in the area. And I'd made it to like 30 years old and I realized I hadn't traveled. I hadn't really done anything. I hadn't really got out and seen as much as I've always wanted to. And I just kind of decided that I was I was going to go take my buddy's Prius and I was going to drive around the Grand Canyon by myself and just hike and meet whoever I met, sleep with my head at the trunk and my feet up at the gear shift and just make my way around the Grand Canyon, just hiking and seeing what all I could see. I look back at that, like, I mean, I literally I don't know, there was just no stop. It was just go, 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 just see what you could do. I didn't have any regard for safety or like, I just kept pushing and pushing and pushing. But out of that has come some of the greatest pictures, stories, memories that I have.
Wow.
And like in my office now, I have a lot of those pictures. Like if you've been on like the Instagram and stuff, like you've seen some of just these beautiful like landscape pictures. Like I'll have them on the wall. I'm a school counselor. So like when some of these kids come in, because I'm back where I grew up, I'm in Southern West Virginia. So these kids that come into my office that need counseling, you know, they'll often in the downtime, they'll look up at the wall and see all these pictures. And it's kind of like, I'm from the same place that you're from. Like I live in the same place and I still get to go to these places. Like you can still grow up, you know, and travel and go see that, you know, the world is so huge.
Mm. Wow. And speaking of, because you are a counselor, and I've got a bit of a deep question for you. Why do you like to counsel or help people? What draws you to that?
Yeah. Well, I talk a lot in the book, like my middle school years, those sixth, seventh, and eighth grade years. I kept a lot of the experiences that were rough to myself. I didn't share it with a whole lot of people. I just kind of internalized it. I know one of my best friends, he's reading the book right now. And he's like, I was with you the whole time through that. Like, and there's all these experiences. He says, I know, I believe you. I know that they were true, but you never said anything. Like you never really talked about it. But a lot of those stories, a lot of those rough times, I just had always purposed that I want to go back and try to help anyone else that may have been going through that might have been suffering in silence, so to speak, to try to catch those signals that they're putting out, knowing what I felt and knowing probably the signals that I put out unknowingly, just being a kid and not yet knowing how to hide things as well. I want to go back and try to catch those in my students. so that they can be, I know that school counselors are really supposed to focus on like academic well-being, but my big thing is if your mental health is right, academics will follow. Like, but if you're, just because your academics is right doesn't mean necessarily that your mental health is there. So I really
Yeah.
focus on that aspect with the kids.
Absolutely, yeah. And what's been your biggest challenge with this mental health, trying to help kids, in your
Yeah.
opinion?
Yeah. The biggest one is oftentimes you're having to, I usually say the answer that typically will work is the most simplistic answer typically, but it's the hardest. I mean, you know this, if you're into fitness or anything, like everybody's always trying to look at like at this diet or that diet, or what do I got to do, you know, and it's really the simplest answers are, it's, you got to put in the
Yeah, that's
work,
right. Yeah.
do the hard work. And that's typically the hardest is with the kids, is knowing that some of them come in with the deck stacks just against them. I mean, they just got dealt a really rough hand, and knowing that they have years before they get to start building their own world, before they get to move out on their own. And so trying to counsel and help a student who is going to go home and see these examples in their house that are completely the opposite of everything that will help them progress. That's so, I mean, that's tough, is overcoming their homes. And again, not saying that all their homes are bad, but I'm just saying that's one of the biggest obstacles, that if there's a kid in turmoil and their home is also in turmoil, I can't help their parents. I can't go into the home. I just have that student in front of me. And that's always the toughest.
Yeah, it must be a very difficult position you get put in, because you can probably see everything happening, and you can see the relationship with the parents, and you can see the child, and yeah, you've got a good bird's eye view, but I guess it's very difficult for you to intervene in the parents side of things, I guess. I don't know. That's just what
Yeah.
I'm sensing. Yeah.
Now, sometimes the parents will lean, like will contact you and like really want you to intervene and work and help them. But that's not always the case. The students that I'm with right now, I'm with 10th grade students now, and I've been with this particular group since they were in 5th grade. I was with them all through middle
Wow.
school, and then when they transitioned to high school, they opened up another counselor position at the high school, and they moved me into that. So I've just continued. So now there's a lot of parents in that group that do know me now, and we have that relationship, and like we can talk a lot and work. But there's still just that population of parents that are very tough to get a hold of, very tough to reach out to. And but so all I have is the student in
Mm,
front. Yeah.
yeah. Just an experience I went through. I was the captain of a tennis team, and I had to manage all the players' rosters and the schedules and things like that. And there was this one child who he wasn't, his results weren't as strong as the other kids. And I I wanted to win. The team wanted to win, so I had to put the strongest team in. And I had to actually cut this kid from the team. And I still remember it was the hardest phone call. I contacted the kid first, but he didn't pick up. So I'm like, okay. I actually went to his parents, and that was a big mistake, because I got yelled at over the phone,
Oh, I'm
because
sure, yeah.
I didn't really, I guess I didn't word myself right, or I don't know. But yeah, that's what I'm saying. It can be tough intervening in that parent space, or it can be a bit of a challenge. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Constantly looking for ways to help them at home just as much as at school. It's just we have more resources available at school than we do once they leave.
And what is school like in? Because you're from, is it Charleston? Is it United States?
That was see, that's what's even fun. I'm from a place smaller than Charleston, but Charleston was the biggest area closest to me. I'm from
Ah,
we're outside. It's called Beckley, West Virginia.
okay.
Um, Yeah, it's in southern West Virginia, so it's about an hour outside of Charleston.
Shout out to Beckley.
Yeah, right.
So what's school like in Beckley? What's a typical day? What does a typical day look like at?
Um, right now with the pandemic, it's incredibly different, but the typical day would, I mean, the kids come in around 7 in the morning, have breakfast if they want it, and they go through a few classes, lunch, and then a few classes, and then they're usually out by about 2 o'clock. Um, Again, with the pandemic going on right now, it's much different. Right now we have on Mondays and Tuesdays, if your last name is from A through L, you come to school. And on Wednesdays and Thursdays, it's M through Z. And then Fridays are kind of, the students are home, the teachers and all the staff's there, but it's kind of like a deep cleaning and like a planning day for the teachers, because half of our students are actually coming to school, the other half are virtual.
Right.
Yeah,
So you have to manage the virtual and non-virtual
right.
aspect of everything. Okay, yeah, right. Okay. And what's the diet? I'm just curious, like what are the what do they serve? What food do they have at the schools? Just
Um, uh, I mean, it just, it varies.
varies, yeah.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it just switches up from, I mean, really just about, I mean, really anything between, the breakfast is they'll do like the fruit parfaits, and for lunch is typically like they'll have fruits and vegetables, and then some sort of meat or pasta, um, fried chicken. They'll do turkey, chicken Alfredo, just different, yeah, just different
Cool.
meals. Yeah.
And speaking of food, do you have a go-to food or what's your diet looking like at the moment? I'm just from a curious aspect.
Yeah. My diet is typically through the day. I usually make it on, I eat like nuts and fruits typically through the course of the day. And then at night for dinner, like I'll get it once I'll get a workout in. And when I come home, I would love to sit and be like, oh, my diet is awesome. Like I'm dialed in, but, but my dinner is typically like, is whatever. And where I'm a distance runner. So like I've been able to, at this point, to overcome some of my dietary slackness. But through the day, I'm spot on. Like through the day, it's just water, nuts and berries type stuff. Just kind of get me
Yeah,
through the
right.
day. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite dessert? Do you have a go-to ice cream or something?
Dessert would be, yeah, vanilla ice cream on
Vanilla.
top of the warm brownie. That's the like, if I
Oh,
can have that, like I'm good. Now, come Christmas time, everybody around here always laughs at me because I'll put on about 20 pounds around the Christmas season because I drink about a carton of eggnog a day. I have a really crazy upset, like it's a terrible habit. Like,
can you explain to the Australian audience what the eggnog is? Because it's not. We don't really have eggnog here in Australia. What? No. What is eggnog?
I don't know what I would do. It's basically a carton full of sugar. I mean, it's like I don't even know what else in it, other than it's just amazing. I guess like egg, nutmeg, cinnamon. Like I said, tons of sugar. It's like if you've ever had a vanilla milkshake, like a vanilla ice cream milkshake, and if you melt that down, that's what it's a little bit thicker than milk, but it has that sweetness of a vanilla milkshake. And
Oh,
so
okay.
very, very bad for you, like incredibly bad for you. And I absolutely can't stop. From November, I'll usually like book a race end of October. And so I'll be like disciplined up until like Halloween, around the first week in November. But once that race is done and behind me, it's all bets off for like 2 months. It's just drinking that stuff, and I will gain too much weight. And then January and February, March is like busting my tail to get it back off every year. And every year about this time, I'm like, why did I do that? I'm not going to do that again next year. And I do the same thing every single year.
Is there alcohol in eggnog?
I don't put it in it, but a lot of people do. Yeah, a lot of people do. And I often wonder when people see me walking through the store with like 11 cartons, if they're like, that guy has a problem. Like, I didn't know his life was that rough. Like, I don't know. It's hard to say what they think, but yeah, some people do. I don't. I just drink it straight from the carton.
Wow. That's really cool. Thanks. I guess, sure, like, so speaking of mindset, do you have any processes that you go through, or any rhythms, or any patterns that go through your day, like almost like a ritual, or do you have any things that you do on a daily basis, or?
Yeah, typically, I will, I'm not a morning person at all. But you know, we all get up, we, you know, go to work, and my typically routine is to, I always go onto YouTube and usually watch or listen to, while I'm getting ready and stuff, like a church sermon of some sort that can like play in the background for the duration of me getting ready, usually an hour from here, from my house to school. I'll usually listen to that to just kind of get my head right. A lot of people will wake up and read in the morning, and God bless those people that can wake up and read in the morning. I wish I would have been made that way, but I'm not at all. Like, it takes me an hour or two to just to get going. And but yeah, that's the typical, like, I have to have that every morning. Like, if I don't have that time in the morning, like, I'm off, like I'm thrown off. Like, I feel like I'm just like shooting from the hip the rest of the way as the day goes on. And then usually, go ahead.
Are you a coffee drinker?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So but I'll do like coffee in the morning, coffee. I may take one at around lunch, but I don't drink too much. I try to not drink too much of it. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm in the same boat. I kind of over consume coffee, and by the end of the day, I can't sleep. So it's something I'm cutting back on. So
I got ADHD, so I got to watch sugar. Like, if I take in sugar anytime after 4 or 5, it's going to be a rough night. Like, I'm going to be up.
Wow.
Super late.
Okay. And you touched on you watch a sermon in the morning. So this is gonna roll into my next question, which is, do you believe in God?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, I do. Was I always have. I've had my questioning. I love conversations about it. I have friends of all different faiths, or none at all. Like, and I always enjoy those conversations, like, just to keep an open mind and just hear where everybody's coming from, and see everybody's different perspectives and things like that. And yeah, from my perspective and my faith, yes, I believe in God for sure.
Yeah. And I guess, what do you say to those people that doubt you, or that try to put any doubt in your mind about God, or what do you say to those people usually?
Well, typically, anytime anybody's ever tried to bring about questions, one, I'm not afraid of saying I don't know. Like, that doesn't to not know something doesn't scare me. I'm not an individual that says he's got it all figured out and I have all the answers. But I am a person that tries to, I love learning. Like I said, I love to hear all different perspectives. So I will seek out opinions that are differing from mine just to
Yeah.
hear like different angles. And so I've tried to push myself to even doubt, to think of things that would challenge me and that would push me. So typically there's a lot of questions that maybe people would throw my way that I have thought about or dissected. Others I'll say, I don't know, like, let me come back to you, with that.
I guess the most common one is the most common expression that I hear is, if God is real, why does he cast so much pain in the world? In the
Right,
form. Yeah, that's like a massive thing.
right.
How do you navigate that question?
That question. Well, I always want to look at the one. Pain is, a lot of times we see pain doesn't feel good. Suffering doesn't feel good. However, anytime, like if you were suffering, that is also an opportunity though for your friends or those around you to help you, to step in and to show you. I have experienced the greatest amount of love from friends and family in my moments of deepest pain. And so while I know suffering and pain hurt, I also see that as an opportunity to show the love of God. Now, unfortunately, do a lot of people do that? No, a lot of people, will say, "Well, I'm glad that's not happening to me," rather than say, "That's not happening to me, so maybe I can give you my resources. Maybe I can help you because that's not happening to me. I have more to offer at the moment because I'm in that spot." And my faith goes back to, everything was right in the beginning and then it goes wonky, so to speak. And so we're all essentially on this roller coaster where the seatbelts don't latch, and some of us hang in there longer than others, but ultimately, like, it's broken in the moment. And but again, my perspective is that uh that God is wanting to right all that was wrong, but he uses us to do it. Um, and and I think sometimes we excel and we do a really good job at that. And I think a lot of times we drop the ball, we miss it because we're selfish and we get doing our own
Mm.
thing. And other people suffering, we have it so smooth. And I think sometimes too, life is so smooth that we forget how broken things are. Like, we forget that at any moment it could go sideways. And so, but I mean, so I always think like certain things, like if he would stop this or if he would stop that, I wonder if from his perspective, he was like, but I was trying to get you all involved. Like, I was trying to, like, I was like, like that was a softball toss. Like, you could have knocked that out of the park and showed somebody this crazy amount of love that would have changed their life and changed their perspective forever. Like, while we're sitting there going, fix this or change this, he's like, oh, but if you got in there, it would fix, it would, it would change. But when we're talking suffering on a large scale and suffering on a global, horrific historical tragedies, um, that goes back to, and I don't mean to minimize that anybody's pain when I say, when I was talking like we're on a broken roller coaster, or this world is fallen or broken. I don't mean to like minimize anybody's pain with that kind of simple answer. I just know that I believe that God uses us to kind of right a lot of those wrongs, because I mean, if we would, I think even someone without faith in God or anything would say most of the suffering in the world is at the hands of man, at the hands of someone else. Like, yes, there are weather and there are natural disaster type things, but a lot of the other suffering is people towards other people, more so than just things that kind of just happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I was reading something from a philosopher the other day. His name's Blaise Pascal, and he puts an interesting perspective on the whole debate of God. And he puts it and this guy was a mathematician. He was very logical, he was very rational, and he has faith, he believes in God, and he says that it's actually more beneficial as a human to believe in God, because having that belief provides you with a mental advantage. And this is how I've interpreted it. So it provides you with a mental advantage in tough times. You know, it's almost like having an extra, almost like an extra mentor in your life when times get tough, as opposed to if you didn't believe in God, you don't quite have that openness. You're a bit more closed off. And he puts it in those perspective. He says that, yeah, there's more advantage in believing in God. So I definitely, and I agree with that actually, because I do personally believe in God, and I pray regularly. Just I pray for gratefulness. You know, I'm in such a easy situation in my life. Touch wood.
Yeah.
Nothing's, you know, I'm cruising at the moment. So I thank God for that.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just an interesting, because it's just an interesting perspective. I just thought I'd get your take on it. So
Yeah.
thanks for sharing that. Yeah.
It's no problem. That was the hardest. That was within the book, when I touch on the spiritual aspect of it, that was the toughest chapter to write.
Mm,
Because it's it's one thing to know, I know my world, and I know that, like I said, I have friends of all different faiths that that I've grown up with, people who don't even believe in God altogether, and we still hang out. We get along great, like we love each other, like we respect each other. And so I know that in my world, I have those people around me. But you want to convey, when I'm writing the book, it's like, okay, how do I convey that that's my spirit? Like that is my natural disposition. So that I don't come across as like, believe this or else, like I'm just
yeah.
sharing, like this is my perspective, like this is this is what I believe on this. And that was the toughest chapter by far. I don't know how many times I rewrote it, and ultimately I had to just be like, this is good. I just trust that people will know my heart and know where I'm coming from. But yeah, those are, I mean, anything when it comes to God are the biggest questions and most powerful.
It's such a touchy topic, and I'm wondering why it's such a touchy topic. I guess, yeah,
It's been
I mean,
used to assert dominance
mm,
so many times, like people have abused it. Like, uh, I mean, a lot of people throughout history have taken it and twisted it and used it. And when you can twist and manipulate something and say that it was God, that gives it that extra little oomph to it. And unfortunately, people have misrepresented, uh, I think, the Christian faith for sure, throughout the years, heartbreakingly so. And so I think people now are kind of on a defensive, when the whole thing is initially about love and grace. Like, who would ever not want that to be around them? And
that's right.
so,
Yeah.
uh, and so if that's what you're conveying, I think that it will take those, people's walls will come down if that's what your life is about, if you're living that out. And I think the more and more people live that out, like you said, the less touchier the subject will become, as people, even when you
Mm,
approach that subject, you approach it with love and grace. You give people room to say, I don't know about this, I don't know about that, like I'm still trying to figure this out, and share their own experiences. Like, you give them that room to do that. And I think if more and more people could maybe approach it that way, it would certainly ease the tension with the topic.
yeah. And I wanted to get your opinion on something else. And I spoke to a lady the other day, and she was a born Buddhist, converted to a Christian, and she's got a Muslim name. So she's got like, what's your opinion of religion as a whole? Like, I guess can you subscribe to multiple religions at once, or are you only, you kind of locked in type of deal? What I mean.
Well, I've often made the statement that typically, I know I got a buddy who was Buddhist for a long time, and then converted to Christianity, and he was one of the coolest, like, easygoing Christians that I had ever met. Like, super great mindset. I'm all for like, I would say, studying all different religions and gathering information, because there's good, in most every religion I've studied, there's good there. There's not all, it's not all bad. There's good, there's things to learn, I would say, from every one of them. However, and this is when a lot of people, can kind of like back up a little bit, and they'll say, but when it comes to a relationship with God, my faith is the Christian faith, and that's through Christ, rather than through multiple religions. It seems as though, of all the religions I've studied, Christianity has a guy paid the highest price, like the worst, like all the other ones that were started by a guy that just kind of lived and died, didn't really necessarily have to go through like all the beatings and and if there were multiple ways to God, I don't know why one would be much more horrific than others, as far as when you go into the beatings of Christ. So I would say, when it comes to a relationship with God, I say that's through Christ. But again, because someone else doesn't believe like me, doesn't mean that they're not my friend, that we can't talk, that we can't disagree. And, if somebody looks at me and says, oh, I disagree with you, like, I think that I would say, okay, like,
Would you say that there's another way to reach God aside from Christianity, or would you say that that's the only way to reach God?
well, I think that God is constantly reaching out to us. I mean, why else would we be here? Why else would he have us here? Like, he's constantly reaching out to us, and he'll use all different means, I think, to do so. But I think it's ultimately in following the example of Jesus. Like, to me, that is the example of what it is to be in tune with God. And so, to me, following any other example would fall short. And again, that's my faith. Like, so I would say, ultimately, to follow after God and to fall in line with what he wants for us, and for us to serve other people, and how we love other people and show grace to other people. For me, Jesus is that example, that perfect example.
Do you believe that Jesus was real?
Yes. Yeah. Everything, like I said, all the questions that I've dug into, everything, leads me back to that. I always say, I don't think real or not real seems to, it's, whether somebody believes that he was divine or not is the big question.
Yeah, I don't know. I got no idea as well. So for me, I just, I'm just curious from that aspect. So,
Sure.
So I guess, have you had any experiences, any experiences that may seem supernatural in your life, or may seem a little bit strange? And
so, and this isn't like a shameless plug, but like this is kind of like, this is kind of the true origin of the book, the Martian book that I wrote, is this. It has seemed like all my life, there was always this pull towards social justice, empathy, service, this tie to, if I'm in a room with people, everybody can be laughing, but if one person is sad or shows like a different disposition, I'm instantly like locked into that person. And how can I make them, how can I get them to the rest of the room, and how can I lift them up? But being that way has caused me to basically grow up incredibly weird. I mean, incredibly, like, that is like, I mean, in middle school, the goal is to join a pack. Like, it's to find your group and lock in and ride that out. And when that doesn't make sense to you, when it doesn't make sense that, like, how do you, like, people aren't shapes, colors, letters, and numbers. Like, it's not categories. Like, people aren't categories. Like, they're individuals with individual stories. And when you go about life that way, from the beginning, for as far back as I can remember, that to me felt like a touch of supernatural. Like, that doesn't make sense that, like, kids think that way, to me. Like, and I'm around students all the time, and that is not a normal. Again, the normal is to, one, when you're in elementary school, is to be a kid. The only thing you care about is the weather, and you can play outside. Middle school is link up with a group, and high school is to stay in that group. And so I've always felt like there was always this pull on my life towards, again, serving people, helping people in some way. And I've tried to run from that. That's the thing. Like, I talk about this in my book. Like, I tried to pull away from that. Like, I was like, you know what? Like, I'm done helping people. I'm done with the God stuff. I'm done with Christianity. Like, I'm just going to go do my own thing. And I had a buddy, like, while I was living in that season in my life, a friend of mine calls me up high, and he can't drive home, and I'm the guy that he calls. And so, like, I go and I pick him up, and he's like, man, I can't go home like this. Like, if I walk in and, like, my folks see me like this, like, it's going to be bad. So he's like, can we just drive around? So we're driving around, and he's wanting to talk to me about God. And I'm like, I'm trying to get out of this stuff. Like, I'm trying to just do me right now and not, like, have these conversations. And I remember him being like, man, if you could give me one Bible verse, like, what would it be? And I'm like, over there, like, it's dark at night, and, like, I'm like rolling my eyes, like, dude, like, I'm really just trying to do me. Like, so I throw out a Bible verse, and he pauses, and he's like, that's exactly what I needed to hear. And I'm like, what? Like, how is that what you needed to hear? Like, so I drop him off at his house, like, and I go and I pull over in a parking lot, like, and just me and God kind of I have a shouting match. Like, I'm just like, why do you just keep pulling me back into this? Like, why is that? Like, and I started to then be in tune of other people and kids growing up who kind of had those same characteristics, that they just seemed like they were just a part of something that their parents didn't put them into, their environment didn't put them into. Like, they were just, it was like this common thread. And that's why I was just always like, it just feels like I'm from somewhere else. Like, there's just something else, somewhere else operating this that's not. And so when you say there's not been one specific supernatural, it's just kind of been a string of, like, odd, like, why do what's pulling me back into this? Why do I act this way? Why can't I just be normal? Why can't I just be like everybody else, who doesn't seem to have a care in the world? Like, and that's just, again, that's not the hand I was dealt. So it's almost like a string of supernatural events, what it feels like.
Yeah. Yeah. Even kind of have gone through that where, I mean, I work a 9 to 5 job, which is, I guess, very structured, very process driven. And this is why I've kind of ventured into podcasting, because it's a creative outlet.
Right.
And I'm learning so much talking to different people like yourself. And yeah, I've never quite understood the conventional schooling method and the conventional, yeah, just the way, I mean, going into my past, I've been fired from jobs, because just, I've questioned a lot of things, and I've probably more due to my um, lack of discipline, I guess. They sacked me, but that's fine. But yeah, I kind of never really kind of fit into the conventional model of society, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
And see, that's exactly, I mean, and when you don't fit in, you when you don't fit in, you feel out of place. Like you feel like an outsider. And what I started noticing, and I mean, the first student that I called a Martian at school, I brought her in, and she was like black, like no colors, all black clothes. Very, her drawings were dark, and but she was like an exceptional student. Like if you talk to her, like she just could articulate her thoughts and she was too young to be as mature as she was. And horrible life. Both of her parents had overdosed, passed away, like just a really rough life. And as I was talking to her, I said, I said, what if the way that you are, it's not that you're out to the side. What if you're up ahead? And I was like, because the view is similar in those two. You're not in the group. And I was like, but you have allowed yourself to believe that you're to the side, you're the outcast, and you've not let yourself be a leader, that you maybe are supposed to set a trend, that you're supposed to be a trailblazer rather than go on this path that everybody's going, and you bring other people along with you. And that's when I said, what if you have this world inside of you that's trying to escape, and it's a beautiful world and it's a better world, and it doesn't have an outlet, and it doesn't, and it feels like you're imploding. It feels like you're dark, like you're alone. And I said, but you have the ability to go back and help others not feel alone, and this and that. And the remarkable change in her, and that's what I was telling her, and that's why I said, you're a Martian. Like you're a Martian. Like you're here, but you're not. The world that's in you is from somewhere else. Like it's better, it's whole. It's not.
wow.
You're not better than the other students, but what's inside of you has a better message, has a more whole message. And the transformation that I saw in her, and then I started being like, all right, well, maybe we always focus on these kids whose lives are clearly in shambles, but like, what about these kids that are low key suffering? They may be doing well, they're off the radar, under the radar, like nobody's catching it. So I started trying to pay more attention to these students. And finally this one kid, I told him the same thing that I told the girl, like, this is what I think you are, like you really fit this description. And I mean, it was like a weight was off of his shoulders. And he was like, are there more in this school like me? Like, is there more? Because I feel so alone. Like here I am in a class of 300 and I feel like I'm all by myself. Like he was like, if there's more of us, you've got to get us together. You've got to put us together. And so we started a group at school of this like group of Martians. And it was just really just trying to teach them, like, embrace that difference that's in you. Like, quit trying to feel bad about it. Don't beat yourself up about it. Don't try to run from that. Like that could be the very thing that you're here for, is, and all those experiences and everything that's happened to you compiled and put together could be a force like that just does so much love and service and healing in this world. And so that's really what this mission has been about, with the book and with all of it, has just been to take people that feel like they're outsiders, feel like they're lost, and give them that purpose to embrace their identity, again, as a trailblazer or as a leader. And so that's what I'm hoping like gets relayed with the material.
Wow, that's a really good message that you're spreading. Yeah, it's really interesting because there's this idea. I read this in a book somewhere, I can't remember, but it talks about how the future generations of our children are becoming more what's the word? They're a little bit more intelligent than the previous generation, if that makes sense. So yeah, like I feel like I know the digital age that kids born in, I think, past 2005 or 2010 have always been brought up with a smartphone. So they're introduced with this technology at a younger age, and they're becoming more adapt to it quicker than the previous generation. So yeah, it's just interesting how I guess we're all changing as humans, and yeah, it kind of touches back on your book, The Martians, how you are discovering these amazing abilities in these children, and and everyone's unique. You know, everyone's got their own message to share, I believe. Yeah,
And that's what I had. I had one girl. She sent me a message and said, she was like, "The more I'm reading this book, I feel like anybody could be this." And I was like, absolutely. Like, I think that there are just some people who are showing like those qualities natural, like it's just in them. But the possibility for all of us to show that those same, again, love, grace, helping, serving, hope, like everybody has that ability to produce that and to have that flow out of them. It's just, I often use the analogy. I said, all computers now connect to Wi-Fi, but you have to manually find a network. But until you don't know what all a computer can do until you can connect to the internet. And I said, there's just some people, if we were all laptops, when you open the laptop, it's connected. It seems like they're connected instantly, but they're connected to show other people, hey, you can be connected too. You can do all these same things too.
You're almost kind of like helping humanity. You're almost raising humanity, teaching humanity to be a better version of themselves.
Right.
Yeah. Wow. Cool. Well, I think I might finish the conversation there, Cliff. It's been really enjoyable experience talking with you, and there's a lot to unpack in this podcast. So hopefully the audience takes a lot out of this. And how can people find your book? How can people?
It's on Amazon. So again, the title is Martian, a non-science fiction guide for how to love, raise, and possibly be someone not quite human. It's a long title, but like it's here. It's on Amazon, and I mean that's primarily how I'm selling. I'm in the process of putting together a website and kind of like starting daily writings or weekly writings and short stories and things like that. But yeah, through Amazon, if you type in Martian, it should be there in the search.
Cool. No worries. All right. Well, I'll end it at that. And thanks, guys, for listening. All the best. Thank you.
See you, buddy.